just getting it out there. I hated The Sims Online. I basically would go to work every day, and I would do my 8 hours, and I would eat at my desk, and I would leave as soon as I possibly could and drive back to San Francisco. And I was in the best shape of my life. I go to the gym, I dance, I spend time with friends. It was fantastic. I hated the job. I hated it so much. Everything I did was under so much scrutiny, and everybody like had their own opinions about what I was supposed to be doing, and then someone would come along the next day and change their mind completely about it. And I hated it. I hated it. I hated it. And then one day they said, Eric, do you want to work on an expansion pack? And we'll give you 2 other animators and maybe an artist, and we'll make something cool happen. And I said, hell yeah. Because I hate The Sims Online.
Emotional, damn it!
So, hate is a strong word. And I mean every one of the hateful strong words. Anyway, this is my shirt. My darling wife bought this for me. Meow, 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 meow. Meow, 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 meow. She loves me. She's beautiful and creative and wonderful, and I love her. 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 And so, getting back to it, I hated working on The Sims Online. It was just terrible. But then they said, Eric, do you want to work on an expansion pack? And it's going to be an expansion pack where we try to have parties and invite Sims over to your house and create a better situation for interaction, so that we can sort of make it feel like this is more of a simulation than just a half-hearted emulation of stuff, kooky slapstick elements and 280, 386 or whatever it was. And so, yeah, that's what I wanted to do. We've got Kevin from SimCity and Robert, I think, had just been signed on to work on The Sims Online. And Michael, who was going to be on SimCity, but we got him shunted to us. This was the last thing that we did before people on the SimCity side really got anxious with us. They sincerely hated our guts, especially people who were taking the resources away. So, I mean, I've actually had a situation where somebody called me by not my name because I was not worthy of being in their presence, because I had started my career out as an animator. So, and they were fine artists of some sort, and so they thought that I was beneath them, and that was good to know. It's good to know now, because it makes everything fall into place better. But this is before things got that bad. We had our happy crew of 4, and then we had a few programmers who really weren't coming over to sit with us in our new little fish bowl. But we had BJ West handling a lot of the input, the deliverables coming in from New Pencil, and handling the feedback going out to them. And so we basically had our own fun little space to do stuff in. There was the regular requisite brainstorming that went on with this stuff. Because Tim Letourneau was running it, it pretty much was a more open design process where he wanted people to feel like they were involved and have buy-in. So we had folks from The Sims and folks who were new to it, you know, who'd come on afterwards, who worked on Sim Mars and other things in our little happy group there. And we just threw stuff at the wall and said, what can we do in the same time that we did with Livin Large? And what can we make work? We had a little bit better way of giving out the work so that we could have someone like Kevin work on things like the mime, which was going to be our own version of Sad Clown, which turned out really well. And we had all sorts of cool objects. I was able to work up a bunch of design stuff that I had actual experience with. For the first few years after I finished my degree, I was a bouncer at nightclubs. And some of them held raves, and some of them held weird parties. We actually had bars where there were country and western nights, and there were exotica, tiki kind of nights, disco. It was interesting to try and make that happen in the sim space, especially with things like Mechanical Bull, which I can go into detail a little bit later because that was my baby. The same way that we prototyped up things like the love bed or the hot tub. We were able to make a larger object that had a lot more sort of like magic to it. Let me hold on for a second and I'll do a little presentation on something else, and we'll get back to what House Party was like and how it came together. I don't have a sponsor for this video. I've never really had a video sponsor. But if I had to claim a sponsor for this, it would be me. I'm sponsoring this video. I'm making it, and I'm also making a game. It's a visual novel, kinetic novel right now, but it will have more game elements as it goes on. It's in early access on Steam and itch, and I have a Patreon that I just started. The Steam version is a bit unspiced. Spiciness has been taken out because spicy things aren't allowed on Steam in early access these days because they can't satisfy their card processors. So there's been a lot of back and forth about that stuff. There's a lot of censorship going on right now. Some of it actually is useful because some of it wasn't so great and shouldn't have been there. And on topics that no one should be making a game or doing a visual novel or a romantic thing about, like a romance game or a dating game. But, that's not what I'd be interested in anyway. So, my game is called Aether Hexxen, and basically it's a play, homage, etc. to the Nacht Hexxen. That's the German name for the bomber battalion made up of women pilots who flew in World War II and basically did night raids on all sorts of targets in Central Europe, trying to fight off the forces of evil. These women who were a lot of transit pilots who would spend time basically flying airplanes from factories to forward bases of operation, got it in their heads that they should be more active and take it to the people invading their homeland. The people who were turning their place into death space, which is a term coined based upon things like the siege of Stalingrad, etc., where a whole group of towns or a city or a province will just end up being a place of nothing but misery. And so instead of being Nacht Hexxen, I said Aether Hexxen, so space witches, not night witches. And it is sort of a combination of all the space opera and I guess the cinematic RPGs I enjoyed, especially watching replays of on YouTube, but things like the BioWare Star Wars and original Mass Effect stuff, and just anything that's well written, put together, and fun. So in my case, I decided, because it's Aether Hexxen with 2 X's, because I wanted first and foremost to be able to reproduce that Night Witch aesthetic, so mostly strong, capable, effective women. And also I wanted it to be a fish out of water story, so since this is going to be happening in the 29th century, I made the main character male, but one of the last or only, basically I gave the main person Klinefelter syndrome, and I made the piece of alien tech that makes things happen in this world keyed to 2 X chromosomes. So the aliens that deposited this tech and went away tens of thousands of years ago, they always were XX, and they developed their XXX and XXY and so on variants. They were more genetically diverse, they lasted a long time, and then things just got out of hand and they went away. But they left tech behind that required 2 X's and special other characteristics that they're finding out throughout the piece. Called Aether, Hexxen, Death Space Requiem. There are going to be 3 acts. I'm in the middle of producing the second installment of the first chapter of Act 1. There's some spicy stuff in it, nothing worse than what you might see on a HBO Max kind of show, minus the patent level of cruelty you would see in shows like that, because I'm not that guy. I mean, I'm the kind of guy that would do the prototyping on people who pretend to get busy in a bed making sounds like dogs and cats fighting, or getting busy in a frothy hot tub. I'll have a link down below, either in the pinned comment or the description, or both. If you want to support me, that's one way to do it. Patreon's another way. I'm publishing all this under irkinterAction, just the same as this channel. I'm on Kofi, KOFI, and I'm on Patreon, and the game is on itch and Steam currently. Please do, if you want to support me, at least wishlist it on Steam for me. It's considered an adult title because there's a little bit of nudity and some people are kissing and rubbing up and down against each other, but that's not the main thrust of the story or the piece. Thanks again, and I hope you have a good day. And back to that other guy, the one with the hat. Did I mention I hate The Sims Online? Hey, it's me again, the guy with the hat. So I generally like people, just people in general. And I like the idea that you can get together with a group of people and make something new and fun. The hard parts are when people don't necessarily want to like make something cool happen. They want to have a cool job, but they don't necessarily want to make the cool thing happen or improve it or do. But with the expansion packs, almost to a person, everyone seemed to at least want to pull in the same direction, make something cool happen, because we didn't have to fight out anything for our general existence, fight for justifying anything. We had to make stuff that was fun and put stuff up on the server so that a programmer could hook it up, or in the case of what we really did on the expansion packs, with day by day, week by week, deep in the idea of making a template and making a series of assets that were prototypical, or prototypes for people to hook up for each one of the different disciplines involved. So especially when you got to things like the different objects that people interacted with, like say the weird dancing cage or the bull, mechanical bull that you ride, it was really important that someone, usually me, but it was possible for other people to do it, to actually build something within 3D Studio Max in a simplified form, and then test out really simplified version for people to play with. At that particular point, we weren't necessarily able to, as artists, put together a full object, but we were able to work with the programmer to really get things going. The dialogue you can get back and forth between people with different disciplines is great, especially when you start with a template. And the template is something we developed on The Sims specifically so that you could build the simplified 3D object and render it as if it were a fully finished object with all the states you needed, that you could eventually hand off to a regular, just specialist artist to make the 3D objects that would be rendered into the 2.5D Z-buffered objects. Likewise, you could hand off rough animation with or series of animations that go together in a flowchart and make everything pretty, so that you start and you loop during the middle of things like riding the bull, and then when you're eventually thrown by it, you have several different variations of where the person gets off and link, and then get back up and walk over and go back to where you routed to and from the object. So you could hand off a packet which was the animation for the animator to work with, especially specialist animators who could do really fine work, and you could hand it off to the programmer because they'd then have an animation that was the default one and could be worked on while being hooked up too. So you could get the timing tighter, but you'd still have the same number of pieces, and it would be like they got a version, the programmer got a version of the scaffolding version, the thumbnail version, but because it was in an order and it was planned out to the point where they could look at it and say, okay, here's where I start and here's where I end, and here are the middle part. You could have handed off the rough object to the artist to finish, the rough animation to the animator to make pretty, hand it off to the programmer. And then as you brought those pieces together, you got to have them interface, and if somebody came up with an idea about how to make it flourish in it or make it pop a little bit more, you could, if you had the time to, just go in and make that change and see it the next day or the same day actually in a demo of the game, or a demo version, the sandbox version of the game. So I think that was one of the most effective tools we had. Latter 4 expansion packs I worked on, like Hot Date, where we were able to actually do visual prototyping because we were moving away from the individual neighborhoods and having the Sims use taxis and buses and all sorts of different transportation to move to downtowns and old towns, vacation lands. So when we did that, it was much easier to simply do our brainstorming and then have the items that we worked through and got approved to move on, be able to put them in context with all the other objects we were trying to build, all the other scenic elements, the different NPC-ish characters, and really get a feeling for how stuff was coming together. In House Party, that wasn't as much of an issue because we were going to be in the main neighborhood, to be having people bring other folks and even celebrities to their individual house parties. The initial Livin Large is supposed to be just a furniture pack, but managed to pack stuff into that product that filled out the game better and made things more fun and more perfect. And likewise, when we moved into House Party, we were able to generally make it so that we had a bunch of objects and a bunch of NPCs, a bunch of scenarios that made things more rich and more fun, just generally fun. So, I like fun. Do you like fun? Fun is fun, but when you have as much fun as you can, then you sort of like might overdo the fun, and then you will like, fun won't be as fun anymore, and I don't want to unfun the fun. This is a transition where we were watching a bunch of old school Maxis kind of work ethic and ethic in general running up against the beginnings of the electronic artsification of things. That being said, there was all sorts of Sims mania going on when it came to what the parent company thought could be accomplished with the individual intellectual property. So there was talk of making things television-wise with the Sim, talk of making things that were TV-oriented or that were expanding it. There were ideas going around of how to make an amalgam of SimCity and The Sims, and how to incorporate more of what The Sims had with SimCity, which the scale is not exactly something that brings, I mean, the scale of SimCity is not something that is directly compatible with what goes on with The Sims, because The Sims is about more intimate experiences, and SimCity is more about the waves and movements of larger numbers of people and the individual and groups of buildings and infrastructure that can handle them and move them about and be influenced by them. So it was very, very strange. You know, things came about like Simsville, and there was talk about making hybrids of different types. I don't think that was going to happen. It didn't really happen. People later on tried to make it at other companies and got in trouble with it. But I'm generally happy about the way House Party turned out, because it was iconic enough to use some of the attention we were getting from celebrities and other folks, and it generally made it so that we had more eyeballs on things when folks who had a wacky aesthetic that kind of approached Will Wright made overtures to us, and we made overtures back. So the next video is going to be not about the objects or the themes. It's going to be about the interactions, at least the ones I was able to have, with the celebrity that we got to incorporate in our game, whose initials are Drew Carey.
Love